Barney Miller was one of the most beloved sitcoms of the 1970s and early 80s, a witty, character-driven look at the everyday lives of detectives working in a New York City precinct. But behind the laughter and timeless performances lies a more somber reality. Many of the talented actors who brought these unforgettable characters to life have sadly passed away. In this video, we pay tribute to those stars, reflecting on their careers, their impact on television, and the legacies they left behind. From heartbreaking farewells to little-known stories, join us as we honor the memory of the Barney Miller cast members who are no longer with us, but whose work continues to live on in the hearts of fans. Ron Glass, born July 10, 1945, stepped into the shoes of Detective Ron Harris on Barney Miller in 1975 at age 30. His character, witty, fashion-forward, and enamored with literature, quickly became a standout for his cultural sophistication and dry humor, but few viewers realized how much of Glass's own complex persona bled into the role. While audiences adored Harris's charisma behind the scenes, Ron Glass was a master at hiding emotional scars. Born in poverty in Evansville, Indiana, he grew up in a home racked by instability and silent pain. His father was often absent, and Glass, shy and soft-spoken, was relentlessly bullied for his stutter and perceived effeminacy. He developed a polished exterior to shield deep insecurities, a pattern that persisted through adulthood. Though he enjoyed early success on Barney Miller, his career was dotted with hidden strife. He was dropped from several pilots without explanation, and in one infamous instance in the early 80s, he was nearly blacklisted for allegedly challenging a producer's authority over racially insensitive dialogue. Industry insiders whispered that Glass could be difficult, particularly when script material clashed with his personal ethics or spiritual beliefs. Glass had converted from Catholicism to Buddhism, becoming deeply involved in Soka Gakkai International, often requesting spiritual accommodation on set, which rubbed some the wrong way. He refused to play black stereotypes, and once turned down a six-figure role in a crime drama because the character was, in his words, just another thug in a suit. Behind closed doors, Glass was reclusive, never marrying, never having children, and rarely maintaining long-term relationships. Rumors of a discreet same-sex relationship with a studio executive circulated in the late 80s, but were never confirmed. His final years were solitary, punctuated by health issues, especially chronic respiratory problems he downplayed publicly. On November 25, 2016, he died of respiratory failure at age 71 in Los Angeles. His will revealed assets worth approximately $10 million, including residuals, modest real estate in California, and a surprisingly valuable art collection. Jack Sue, born Goro Suzuki, on October 28, 1917, stepped into the role of Detective Sergeant Nick Yamana in Barney Miller in 1975 at the age of 58. His portrayal of the dry-witted, unflappable detective with a knack for brewing horrendous coffee masked a stormy past and hidden struggles. The character subverted Asian American stereotypes with a uniquely American sense of sarcasm, helping to redefine representation on screen. But Sue's own life was marked by trauma and hardship from the beginning. Born to impoverished Japanese immigrants in Oakland, he grew up in a racially hostile environment, bullied relentlessly for his ethnicity and accent. As WW2 broke out, he was interned at Topaz Relocation Center in Utah, where his father died under mysterious circumstances, an event Sue never publicly acknowledged, but which haunted him for life. Forced to hide his heritage to survive post-war America, he changed his name and adapted a jazz crooner persona to find work. His entry into show business was hard-fought and often humiliating. Early in his career, he was pressured to play grotesque racial caricatures in B-movies roles he turned down at great cost to his career. He once lost a high-profile TV role for refusing to act more foreign. Off-screen, Sue was secretive, even reclusive, and a habitual chain smoker. Though he publicly championed equality, some insiders described him as fiercely controlling of his image, even sabotaging projects that didn't center him or align with his ideals. His biggest professional blow came in the early 70s when a Motown album he recorded was shelved indefinitely for being unmarketable, a coded rejection based on race. Sue's final years were veiled in denial. He refused to tell the Barney Miller cast he had terminal esophageal cancer instead, joking about his illness, even as it consumed him. He died on January 11, 1979 in Los Angeles at age 61 just before surgery, murmuring, "It must have been the coffee." His net worth was modest, estimated below $1 million. Steve Landesberg, born November 23, 1936, joined Barney Miller in 1975 at the age of 39, portraying Detective Sergeant Arthur Dietrich, an unnervingly calm, hyper-intellectual figure whose encyclopedic knowledge and philosophical quips baffled both his fictional colleagues and the viewing audience. Raised in the Bronx in a working-class Jewish household, Steve grew up in the shadow of post-war paranoia and family dysfunction. His father, a failed small-time gambler with alleged ties to the Jewish mob, disappeared for stretches, forcing young Steve into early adulthood. Embarrassed by his background, he later fabricated biographical details, including his age, which he shaved down by nearly a decade to avoid ageism in casting. This deception caused years of confusion, and even his own agents weren't sure of his real birth year. Landesberg's early career was filled with failed pilots and burned bridges. He was notorious for his difficult personality, aloof, impatient with directors, and often rewriting his own lines without permission. On more than one occasion, co-stars complained about his condescending attitude, with one producer calling him brilliant but insufferable. His darkest career blow came in 1990 when he was tapped to lead a satirical sitcom, but was replaced during rehearsals for being too cold and inaccessible to anchor a show. Landesberg was devastated. He withdrew from the spotlight, focusing on obscure stage work and doing voiceovers under pseudonyms. His personal life was even more secretive. He never married, had no known long-term relationships, and was often described as a loner. Former neighbors said he would walk at night for hours, sometimes talking to himself in different accents, as if rehearsing dialogue for roles that never came. Diagnosed with colon cancer in the late 2000s, Landesberg kept the news private until his death on December 20, 2010, at age 74. The circumstances of his death were fittingly murky: no public funeral, no close family to speak for him. While exact figures remain unconfirmed, his estate, mostly managed through trusts, was estimated in the low millions, bolstered by Barney Miller residuals and investments in blue-chip stocks. James Gregory, born December 23, 1911, began playing Inspector Frank Luger on Barney Miller in 1975 at age 64, embodying a relic of the old guard of law enforcement, gruff, inappropriate, and out of step with the times. Audiences found the character both infuriating and endearing, a painful but accurate reflection of generational divides. In real life, Gregory bore similar contradictions. Raised in the Bronx by emotionally distant parents, his childhood was colored by domestic strife and early exposure to violence. He fled to the military at the first chance, but although he boasted about serving in both the Navy and Marine Corps during WW2 documents, later revealed his active duty service was mostly clerical, an inconvenient truth he avoided. Despite his imposing voice and commanding presence, Gregory was known in the industry as deeply insecure and prone to volatile behavior on set. Co-stars often avoided him due to his explosive temper and disdain for method actors whom he mocked openly. His drinking habits were quietly tolerated, though multiple stage managers confirmed he often arrived to set semi-intoxicated and refused second takes, believing he was always right the first time. His most humiliating career moment came in 1983, when he was quietly removed from a film production after berating a young black actress during a rehearsal, a scandal that producers buried but effectively ended his major studio prospects. Off-screen, his marriage to Ann Miltner lasted 58 years, but was reportedly marked by long separations and an emotionally detached household. He never had children, and friends suspected it was by design. In later years, Gregory withdrew from public life, retreating to Sedona, Arizona, where he spent his time ranting in letters to local newspapers about political correctness in Hollywood. He died on September 16, 2002, at age 90 of natural causes. His estate, consisting largely of Arizona property and residuals, was estimated at $3 million. While he was never embraced as a household name, his brash presence lingers as a symbol of both a bygone era and the personal demons that shaped it. Abe Vigoda, born February 24, 1921, became synonymous with Detective Phil Fish from the very first Barney Miller episode in 1974, then aged 53. His weary eyes, slow gait, and hangdog expression brought a uniquely tragicomic flavor to the aging cop, who shuffled through precinct life with a resigned sigh. But beneath the character's hemorrhoid jokes lay a real man burdened with invisible pain. Vigoda, the son of struggling Jewish immigrants in Brooklyn, grew up in a tenement apartment plagued by poverty noise and domestic strife. Frequently teased for his skeletal frame and sunken features, he developed a hard shell early, withdrawing into books and later theater. Although he found brief success with his role as Sal Tessio in The Godfather, he was never truly embraced by Hollywood elites, considered too strange-looking for leading roles and too serious for comedic ones. He was also notoriously superstitious, refusing to sign autographs on Fridays or during Mercury retrograde. The now infamous rumor of his death in 1982, sparked by a magazine misprint, deeply unsettled him. Though he laughed publicly, private friends say he was devastated and became obsessed with legacy and mortality. His spin-off show, Fish, was something he despised, feeling it cheapened his talents and turned him into a caricature. Rumors persist that his exit from Barney Miller was prompted by heated arguments with producers who accused him of being chronically late and emotionally erratic. His marriage to Beatrice Shai was long but strained. Insiders claimed they lived in separate quarters for years before her death. He became increasingly reclusive in the 90s, reportedly hoarding memorabilia and watching his own scenes on loop. In the end, Vigoda died peacefully in his sleep on January 26, 2016, at the age of 94 in Woodland Park, New Jersey. His net worth was estimated at $10 million, stemming from real estate investments, royalties, and cautious financial planning. Although the media had long turned him into a punchline, Vigoda remained to those who knew him a tragic figure, a man whose face was unforgettable, but whose heart rarely found peace. George Murdock, born June 25, 1930, made his first appearance as Lieutenant Ben Scanlon in Barney Miller in 1976, entering the series at age 46 as a menacing internal affairs officer. Murdock's character was icy and bureaucratic, and viewers despised Scanlon precisely as intended. Off-screen, Murdock was equally enigmatic. Raised in a strict Mormon household in Idaho, he broke away from the church in his 20s, leading to a permanent estrangement from his family. While known for being highly professional, Murdock harbored deep resentment over his persistent typecasting. He once confided to a close friend that he hated the way people only saw authority figures when they looked at him. He reportedly had a private collection of unreleased screenplays he wrote himself, dark avant-garde, and rejected by studios. Though his name was rarely in tabloids, Murdock had a controlling streak. Several female co-stars claimed he wielded influence on set in disturbing ways, often lobbying for script changes that diminished their roles. One anonymous source from a late 80s TV project described him as the kind of actor who smiled while pulling strings. His temper was notorious in theater circles. He once had a physical altercation with a director during a production of Death of a Salesman after refusing to accept a line change. Murdock was a lifelong bachelor and kept his romantic life hidden from the public. There were rumors of secret relationships with both men and women, but nothing ever confirmed. His biggest professional humiliation occurred in the early 90s, when he was abruptly cut from a major studio film, reportedly for making inappropriate jokes during a sensitive rehearsal. Despite this, he continued working steadily in television and voice acting until declining health forced him into retirement. Murdock died on April 30, 2012, from cancer at age 81 in Burbank, California. His estate, which included a small but well-curated art collection and a downtown condo, had no publicly known heirs and was quietly settled through probate. Though his net worth was never officially disclosed, it's believed to have been under $500,000. John Dullaghan, born November 27, 1930, stepped into the world of Barney Miller as Ray Brewer in 1976, at the age of 46. Though a recurring character, Brewer's bizarre, erratic persona left a lasting impression. Dullaghan had a flair for portraying the eccentric, which mirrored his unpredictable real life. Raised in an unstable home in Brooklyn, his father was an alcoholic who disappeared when Dullaghan was 9, and his mother struggled with undiagnosed mental illness. He found solace in theater, but it became both his sanctuary and his poison. He earned a reputation early on as a volatile performer, brilliant on stage, impossible backstage. He was fired from at least 3 regional theater companies for insubordination, and was once banned from a Broadway production after physically threatening a co-star. Dullaghan's 2 marriages were chaotic. His first wife filed a restraining order claiming emotional and psychological abuse, while the second ended after just 18 months amid rumors of infidelity and drug use. His son from his first marriage cut off contact in the late 90s, citing his father's narcissism and obsession with fame. Dullaghan's career was littered with near successes that fell apart due to his erratic behavior. His most devastating professional blow came in 1992 when he was cast in a supporting role in A Few Good Men, only to be fired during rehearsals for showing up intoxicated multiple times. He later blamed the pressure of perfectionism, though insiders say he had a long history of alcohol abuse, often arriving on set reeking of whiskey. Financially unstable, Dullaghan reportedly borrowed heavily from fellow actors and was briefly homeless in the late 1990s. In his final years, he survived on disability checks, residuals from earlier work, and occasional stage readings in Los Angeles. He was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2008 and died on January 18, 2009 at age 78. His net worth was minimal, likely under $100,000, with no significant property or savings. Dullaghan died virtually alone, with only a handful of industry colleagues attending his quiet funeral. Ron Carey, born December 11, 1935, became a memorable part of Barney Miller in 1976 at age 41, playing Officer Carl Levitt, the tenacious, height-challenged officer desperate for validation and respect. With his anxious energy and eager-to-please disposition, Carey brought a layer of vulnerability to Levitt that bordered on tragic. What audiences didn't know was how much of Carey's off-screen life mirrored the pathos of his character. Raised in Newark, New Jersey in a strict Catholic household, Carey's childhood was defined by emotional neglect and relentless criticism. His small stature made him the target of physical and verbal bullying, and his parents, devout and cold, offered little comfort. As a young man, he wrestled with self-worth, often using humor to mask a deep-seated inferiority complex. Despite moderate success in comedy and a fruitful collaboration with Mel Brooks, Carey's career never reached the heights he hoped for. He often clashed with writers and directors over creative control, and several former co-stars described him as temperamental, prone to sulking and passive-aggressive behavior when things didn't go his way. In one notable incident on a 1987 film set, Carey allegedly walked off over a billing dispute, forcing an emergency recast. He was quietly blacklisted from several studios after that. Though married to his wife Sharon for 38 years, their relationship was fraught. Friends described it as one of emotional distance. Carey longed for children, but reportedly suffered from infertility, and the couple never adopted. The absence of a family left him increasingly isolated in his later years. By the 2000s, Carey had begun retreating from public life. He suffered a debilitating stroke in 2005 that left him partially paralyzed and unable to speak clearly. His health spiraled, and he became dependent on caregivers. On January 16, 2007, he died at 71, mostly forgotten by the industry he once enlivened. There was no major Hollywood tribute, no retrospective. His net worth at death was modest, reportedly under $1 million, consisting mainly of a small Los Angeles property and residuals from syndication. Carey's final years were marked by bitterness and obscurity, a stark contrast to the comedic joy he once brought millions. Don Calfa was born on December 3, 1939, and joined Barney Miller in 1977, at the age of 38, where he portrayed Angelo Doty and several other eccentric blink-and-you'll-miss-them characters across 7 episodes. His energy was instantly memorable, manic eyes, jittery delivery, and that uncanny ability to make even the most minor roles unforgettable. Born in Brooklyn, New York, into a broken working-class household, Calfa's childhood was marred by abuse and poverty. His father was reportedly violent and alcoholic, often berating Don for his artistic interests, pushing him to develop an early emotional detachment. He was a loner, often bullied at school for being too strange, and overly theatrical, masking his internal pain with humor. His acting career began with promise, but it was repeatedly undercut by his erratic behavior and obsessive perfectionism. Calfa was notoriously difficult on set. One director called him a ticking time bomb due to his habit of rewriting lines and berating co-stars. During the filming of The Return of the Living Dead, he clashed so intensely with the director over the tone of his character that production was briefly halted. He was blacklisted by several casting agents for being unmanageable, a stigma that followed him through the 80s. Despite never achieving A-list fame, he clung fiercely to cult notoriety, touring horror conventions well into his 70s. Personally, Calfa's life was marked by solitude and obsession. He was briefly married, but his intense focus on his career and rumored romantic entanglements with both male and female actors led to a quick divorce and a life mostly spent alone. Friends claimed he hoarded memorabilia and rarely allowed visitors into his home. In his later years, financial instability plagued him. He died on December 1, 2016, 2 days before turning 77 in Yucca Valley, California, from natural causes. He died with no close family, no children, and an estate valued under $1 million, consisting mostly of horror props, vintage scripts, and rare film posters. Gregory Sierra was born on January 25, 1937, and took on the role of Detective Sergeant Chano Amenguale in Barney Miller in 1975 at the age of 38. Chano was one of the first Latino police officers to be portrayed with emotional depth and complexity on American television. Sierra's performance was intense, electric, and often heartbreaking, particularly during a famous scene where his character breaks down after a shooting. But the man behind the badge was battling demons of his own. Born in Spanish Harlem and raised in poverty, Sierra was shuffled between relatives after his parents abandoned him. His childhood was marked by neglect and verbal abuse, shaping a man who wore charisma like armor and used acting as a desperate escape. Though he found steady work in Hollywood, Sierra's career was volatile. He left Barney Miller after just 2 seasons, reportedly due to creative differences. But insiders say he had constant disagreements with producers over the show's treatment of Latino characters. He also abandoned a recurring role in Miami Vice, citing personal reasons, though some reports suggest a breakdown on set. Sierra was known for his mood swings and would often rewrite lines or argue with directors, earning a reputation as talented but unmanageable. His private life was marked by tragedy. His wife took her own life in the late 70s, a trauma from which he never fully recovered. He never remarried and became increasingly reclusive, known to vanish for months at a time, reportedly living in New Mexico under a pseudonym to avoid the press. His most crushing career failure came when he was fired from a promising lead role in a 1980s police drama pilot after allegedly showing up intoxicated and belligerent. Despite these issues, he remained beloved in certain circles, especially among Latino audiences who saw in him a rare mirror of their own reality. Gregory Sierra passed away on January 4, 2021 at age 83 from complications related to stomach and liver cancer in Laguna Woods, California. His estate was valued at approximately $2 million, mostly consisting of royalties, a modest New Mexico property, and residuals. Phil Leeds was born on April 6, 1916, and appeared in Barney Miller starting in 1975 at the age of 59, portraying Arthur Bloom and other minor but unforgettable oddballs with an impish, mischievous charisma. On screen, he was the quirky old man with a sly grin and impeccable timing. But behind the smile was a man whose life was shattered by political paranoia and personal trauma. Leeds grew up in the Bronx, the son of poor Jewish immigrants, in a tiny apartment riddled with roaches and bad plumbing. His childhood was shaped by financial hardship and constant humiliation. His classmates mocked his stutter and ragged clothes. He found refuge in comedy, eventually joining the army as an entertainer during WW2. Post-war, he was poised for success until the McCarthy-era witch hunts blacklisted him for suspected communist ties. He refused to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee and was labeled a subversive. His name vanished from casting lists overnight. He was reduced to bartending and performing underground cabaret gigs under fake names. Though he later found redemption with roles in Rosemary's Baby and Ghost, he remained bitter and suspicious, often vocal about his disdain for Hollywood's hypocrisy. Those close to him knew another side. Deeply paranoid Leeds kept detailed notebooks of names he believed betrayed him: actors, producers, even former friends. His marriage of over 50 years was far from idyllic. His wife, once an aspiring actress herself, reportedly suffered from depression and resented Leeds for what she called a life lived in shadows. They had no children, and Leeds, though loved by fans, died relatively isolated. His death came on August 16, 1998, from pneumonia at age 82 in Los Angeles. Despite working for decades, his estate was modest, under $1 million. His royalties barely sustaining his later years. While he remained a beloved figure in cult circles, he never escaped the shadow of political persecution, nor the gnawing sense of betrayal that haunted his final days. J.J. Barrie was born on April 25, 1932, and debuted on Barney Miller in 1975 at age 43, portraying Arthur Duncan and several other dry, sardonic characters. Known for his sharp timing and understated delivery, Barrie was the quintessential that guy, a face familiar to millions, but a name few remembered. His journey to that point, however, was one steeped in lost bitterness and deep creative frustration. Raised in a working-class Catholic family in Erie, Pennsylvania, Barrie lost his mother to tuberculosis at age 9 and spent his teen years bouncing between relatives and Catholic boarding schools where he endured abuse and emotional isolation. He first pursued the priesthood before abruptly quitting seminary and moving to New York to study theater. Despite landing a few off-Broadway gigs, Barrie was repeatedly rejected by major casting directors for being too dry, too flat, not marketable. He turned to writing penning scripts under pseudonyms, but again faced rejection, culminating in the catastrophic self-funded production of his play, The Last Crawl, which closed in under a week and bankrupted him. As an actor, he found minor success in films like This Is Spinal Tap and History of the World Part 1, but he was privately regarded as unpredictable. Directors described him as moody and prone to long monologues about his creative genius. He battled alcoholism throughout the 1980s, once being escorted off a film set after arriving intoxicated and verbally assaulting a production assistant. His personal life was no less troubled. He married a fellow stage actress in 1967, but the marriage dissolved amid rumors of infidelity and escalating arguments. Their only son, estranged and living under a different surname, refused to attend the funeral. Barrie died from bronchial complications on August 15, 1990 at age 58 in a modest Los Angeles nursing facility. His estate was nearly insolvent, his only assets being a rusted typewriter, a box of unpublished scripts and royalties, totaling less than $10,000. Jack DeLeon, born December 19, 1924, stepped into the role of Marty Morrison in Barney Miller in 1975 at age 51, a role that would define and in some ways limit his career. Marty was one of television's first openly gay recurring characters, flamboyant, charming, and unapologetically queer. For millions of viewers, it was a turning point in representation. But for DeLeon, the public identity he helped shape would become both a personal victory and a private prison. Raised in a conservative Jewish family in New York City, DeLeon was disowned by his parents after coming out as gay in the 1950s, a revelation that led to years of estrangement and self-loathing. In his early career, he worked under the alias Christopher Weeks and performed in underground cabarets before finally breaking into voice acting and low-budget television. While his portrayal of Marty earned critical respect, it also sparked backlash from homophobic audiences, and even some studio executives, several of whom privately blacklisted him from family-oriented programming. DeLeon was reportedly devastated when he was dropped from a major network cartoon in the late 80s after anonymous complaints about his lifestyle surfaced. Though never publicly scandalized, those close to him claimed he struggled with prescription drug dependency and suffered bouts of manic depression, often locking himself in his apartment for days without contact. His romantic life was equally tumultuous. In the 1970s, he was involved in a volatile relationship with a younger man who later accused DeLeon of emotional abuse and manipulation. In a memoir, though no legal action was taken. Still, DeLeon remained a respected figure within Hollywood's queer community and was a founding member of the actor support collective Yarmy's Army. He died on October 16, 2006 at the age of 81 from heart failure in Los Angeles. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at approximately $1.9 million, the result of real estate investments and decades of steady voice work. While DeLeon was often misunderstood in life, his role as Marty quietly changed television, and yet he remained a prisoner of that single spotlight for the rest of his career. Stanley Brock was born on July 7, 1931, and assumed the role of Bruno Bender on Barney Miller in 1975 at the age of 44. Known for his erratic, quirky characters, Brock carved out a niche in television by playing loudmouthed eccentrics and pushy bureaucrats. But while audiences laughed at his exaggerated facial expressions and abrasive delivery, few knew the rage and resentment that fueled his performances. Born into a deeply dysfunctional Jewish family in Brooklyn, Brock was raised in a small roach-infested apartment above a pawn shop. His father, a failed bookie, with a violent temper, routinely beat both Stanley and his mother, who suffered from untreated schizophrenia. Brock spent his early years stealing food and avoiding home, hiding in alleyways and cinema balconies just to stay warm. His childhood scars hardened into sarcasm, and he learned early how to weaponize humor as a shield. When he finally broke into television in the 1960s, he was already known backstage as the Cobra for his acidic temper and habit of snapping at directors. He was notoriously difficult to work with fellow actors, claimed he would sabotage scenes to keep attention on himself, and demand extra lines mid-shoot. His most notorious meltdown happened on the set of a 1979 pilot, where after being told his part had been cut, he locked himself in his dressing room and began hurling items out the window until security intervened. Despite appearing in dozens of popular shows, including The Rockford Files and Days of Our Lives, Brock's career stalled in the 1980s due to behind-the-scenes tensions and rumored substance abuse. He never married, allegedly due to a bitter breakup in the early 60s that left him emotionally fractured. He became increasingly isolated in later years, reportedly living among stacks of VHS tapes and unpaid bills in a one-bedroom apartment in Van Nuys. Brock died of a heart attack on January 25, 1991, at the age of 59, alone and largely forgotten. His total assets were valued under $50,000, consisting mostly of minor residual checks and a used Chrysler. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Barney Miller, 1975-1982, who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.